It is a skill that is related to using the remaining senses to establish position in and in relation to significant objects in the environment. Generally, we use vision and hearing together to gain the information about the surroundings, and based on this information, we understand the detail of our environments. Orientation is knowing where you are and being able to plan how to go to where you want to be in the absence of vision and hearing. One has to depend upon the remaining senses to be able to move around freely. The sense of touch, smell, and taste can all be used to help in recognizing the position in relation to the obstacles and landmarks around in the environment. Mobility is defined as the action of traveling, going from one place to another, safely and freely. To be mobile, a person should be able to gather and use sufficient information from the environment to avoid hazards and to reach their destination safely. What skills are taught through orientation and mobility? When planning an orientation mobility program for children, the focus of training may include sensory awareness. Sensory awareness means gaining information about the world through hearing, smell, touch, and movement. Spatial concepts. It means realizing the objects exist even if not heard or felt, and understanding the relationship that exists between objects in the environment. Searching skills. That is locating the items or places efficiently. Independent movement such as crawling, rolling, or walking. Sighted guide. It means using another person to aid in a travel. Protective techniques. That is specific skills which provide added protection in unfamiliar areas. Cane skills. That is use of various cane techniques to clear one's path or to locate objects along the way. Why is orientation mobility training important for children with a deaf blindness? The process of gathering, recognizing, and interpreting sensory information helps in meaningful and useful concept development. When a child cannot access his world efficiently through his vision or hearing, he needs to learn to use his other senses more effectively. Orientation and mobility instruction provides students who are deafblind with a set of fundamental skills to use residential, visual, auditory, and other sensory information to understand his/her environment. Orientation mobility instruction provides opportunities and skills that can broaden the students' awareness of the environment, resulting in increased motivation, independence, and safety. Orientation mobility instruction for individuals who are deafblind is designed to teach them to move as independently and as purposefully as they are able. For some children who are deafblind, it is reasonable and desirable to expect that they will move about independently in both indoor and outdoor environments. This independence may mean using the white cane to cross streets successfully and learning to use public transport. For others, orientation and mobility instruction will provide the skills necessary to allow independent movement within the classroom or within the home. At a more basic level, and for children with limited motor capabilities, increased independence will mean that they have a better developed residual senses and can more fully understand and interpret information from their environments. They may come to understand where an object is located and where the object is in relation to their own bodies. They will have the ability to move with purpose, perhaps to extend an arm or a roll to obtain that object. While outcomes and expectation may be different for the student who is deafblind, the instruction is similar to that for a child with only visual impairment or deafblindness. The most important adaptations are those related to communication. The orientation mobility instructor will need to ensure that instructions are given to the students in his/her primary language. This may require the support from the teacher and the development of touch cues or object cues. Certain accommodations that enable the student to interact with the public also need to be developed, such as using communication cards for students who want to travel using the public transport, go to the market, restaurant, or any other place in the community. For some children, the lack of auditory and visual input may have a severely limited opportunities to learn about his or her environment and to develop the language to talk about it. Orientation mobility instruction must often be augmented by hands-on learning to make up for the child's lack of prior experience. Language instruction is an integral part of any orientation, mobility training and experiences. Program development and implementation for orientation and mobility. Communication. Developing ways to communicate present the most significant challenge for children who are deafblind. Communication issues must be addressed in every aspect of instructions. For an example, planning for instruction in areas such as concept development must take place into account that although the child may be able to perceive the shape of the dining room within the school, he or she may need to be taught the specific language to enable the child to understand. Children who are deafblind use a variety of communication methods, including tactile sign language, speech, gestures, finger spelling, augmentative devices, pictures, flashcards, objects, body movements, behavior, and facial expressions. Instruction strategies must be incorporate the child's primary communication methods. Motor development, which includes both gross and fine motor skills and focus on developing, enhancing the student's motor abilities. These skills involve the large muscle movements such as walking or running, as well as the finer skills associated with the hand and wrist movements. Concept development. The concept development is closely linked to general cognitive development. It involves the understanding of sizes, shapes, functions of objects, as well as the spatial and positional relationship. It includes the awareness and knowledge of one's own and another's body, and understanding of the body parts, of their movement capabilities, and of body part relationship. Concept development also incorporates an understanding of and a knowledge about the environment. Sensory development. The sensory development optimizes the student's ability to utilize the senses of residual sight and hearing, as well as the tactile, olfactory, and kinesthetic senses. Most students who are deafblind have a residual hearing and are a sight, and instruction can be provided to help them to learn to use this sensory information to understand and interpret the information what they are gathering through their senses. It is important to teach the child to interpret the sensory information and assisting him or her to use this information for purposeful movement. Orientation skills instruction is designed to teach the student to use environmental cues. It will provide the information about the present location and the information about this location relative to other locales mobility skills. The mobility skills incorporate those orientation mobility techniques that promote movement through the environment with safety and ease. These skills include walking with another person, that is guided travel, self-protection skills, and can travel. For young children, these mobility skills will include early purposeful movements such as crawling and walking, sense of touch. In the absence of vision, a person can orient himself by his sense of touch. Touch is essential for concept formation. It is very important for the child with the deaf blindness to get used to various sensations. Tactual skills include experience with a wide variety of shapes, sizes, and textures. Children with the deaf blindness need to learn to use their hands and feet to explore the environment. Hands can be used to understand spatial relationship about texture, temperature, and weight. Hands can be used to trial along any object by mobility. Through hands, one can understand the diversity of object. Feet can be used to understand the position, various landmarks on pathways, and feel changes in surface texture, slope, and so on as he moves about in the environment. Changes in temperature on face or a body can provide orientation information. The touch has its limitation because large objects and environments and distant objects in general are beyond tactile exploration. Many children with deaf blindness are tactually defensive. They exhibit inability to tolerate various textures on their skin. These children need systematic exposure to various textures. These children could be trained to gain information through their whole body, that is, hands, feet, muscles, or skin, and be able to use this information obtained through auditory, visual, and olfactory senses to determine their current location. Sense of smell. Smell is useful for orientation both indoor and outdoor. Although there has been little research in the area of olfactory awareness, it is an important sense in relation to orientation and mobility. Information gained through the sense of smell may be very beneficial in obtaining feedback regarding the immediate environment. Many physical locations can be easily identified through smell, such as a vegetable market, petrol pump, fish market. Smell can be useful as a clue for directions. Smell from kitchen, fish market, or a flower shop. Typical odor from a particular place can be used as a landmark, which also helps in orientation and mobility. In the young infant, the sense of smell is the first to develop. Take advantage of this. Expose the child to a variety of fragrances. It is important for the exposure of an odor to be paired with the actual object. If the child smells a banana, help him to explore banana by other senses, including eating the banana. Encourage the child to associate fragrances with the items or locations. The child may know that when he smells food, it is a time to eat. Encourage other associations involving activities and specific odors or place paired with the odors. As with all experiences, explain the fragrances or odors using real items whenever possible. Sense of sight. When a child with a deaf blindness is very young, it is often difficult to adequately assess child's vision. Therefore, it is important to work with a child to develop whatever abilities child has in this area. To find out what you know now about the child's vision, observe for, that is, what he or she is able to see, from how far the child can see, how does he or she use his sight to get around the house or outside, what other way could the child learns to use his or her vision while moving about. Suggestions for visual stimulation. Pair several sensory cues when working with a child. Choose toys which have a differing textures, colors, and if possible toys that produce a sound. The present objects to the child from varying positions such as in front of him or her, from above, below, or from either right or left side. Then observe if the child responds to visual stimuli equally regardless of its positioning. Encourage the actions paired with the use of vision. If it appears that the child is able to see an object, such as a ball, when holding the object within his or her reach, encourage to reach for it. Communicate to the child about what is around him or her, both indoor and outdoors. It is important to name and sign and then to describe objects and their function. He or she can understand this additional information. Exploration is an important ingredient in helping the child to understand his her world. If the child is able to sign, have him or her tell what he or she sees. Ask the child to identify an object which is within the child's reach or later gradually expand this area to include objects in the room, the house, and ultimately outdoors. The child who has begun independent movement should be encouraged to use his or her remaining vision. Observe if the child is able to avoid obstacles in his path. Is the child able to recognize if he faces any changes? Does he slow down? Does he bend down or reach out to feel something that has a color change? Visual functioning may range from having no vision at all to having an awareness to light being present, to being able to identify the items or even scan his or her environment for visual information. It is important to understand the child's vision as much as possible to encourage the development of visual skills. Importance of concept development. Developing an accurate body image. It is essential that the child develops an awareness of self independent of others, his or her environment. Although this occurs naturally for sighted and hearing infants and toddlers, it may not be so easy for a child with a deaf blindness. Assist a child in forming an accurate body image or a body awareness through many activities or games. Bathing time is an excellent opportunity to begin working on a naming body parts. For an example, stroke the child, name a specific body part, and if appropriate, pair it with the movement. When dressing the child, describe what is happening and what he will do to assist. Through a wide variety of games and activities, assist the child in building a realistic body image. He will come to understand that he has a body, has size and weight, and takes up space, grows, and changes, and has different parts that to do different things. This is followed by the realization that everyone has a body like himself. Awareness of body parts. The child needs to know that he has a different body parts, each having different name, and he should be able to associate movement and function with the parts of the body. Children with deaf blindness do not get the opportunity to learn by watching movement of other people, and so it is necessary to teach children different movements by manipulating physically. Awareness of movements will enable the child to explore his environment in many ways. Spatial relationship. It means once a child develops awareness of his own body, he needs to learn to use his body as a reference point to orient himself in a space. For an example, a child standing near the kitchen may turn and go towards door where the mother is standing. In the next stage, it is important to be able to generalize his understanding of concepts related to him. He needs to understand the spatial relationship by relating an object or a person to him. Gradually, the child needs to understand the relationship of an object to object and to person to person. That is the concept related to spatial relationship, directions, distance, and time help to build up the mental map of surrounding space which helps to move about safely. Development of motor skills. Development of motor skills help a person to move around. It is the basis for mobility skills. Once a child learns to maintain balance, all balance activities need to be taught in a sequential steps. So that is, he is prepared to avoid hazards in the path. A child with a deaf blindness does not learn by observation, and so they need to be trained on proper posture and gait. Dropped head position or a clumsy gait affects the way the child walks. One has to use a physical prompt to train the child for a correct posture and gain it. Communication. It is also necessary to have a means of communication so that the child understands. The child with the deaf blindness may need non-verbal mode of communication, such as physical prompt, modeling, or a sign language. Some children may need objects, pictures, drawing, flashcards, symbols, and braille cards as a communication system. What are the special orientation and mobility techniques? Once a child with a deaf blindness learns to walk independently, there are a number of orientation mobility techniques that can be taught to the child. This includes protective techniques, trailing techniques, sighted aid techniques, cane techniques. The protective techniques. Even in the familiar surrounding, there are many hazards and obstacles and that may hurt a person. Protective techniques help a person to be safe. One uses it when he is unsure and does not want to walk into an unsafe situation, such as open table drawer, closed door, and so on. There are two protective techniques. One is upper arm techniques and lower arm techniques. Trailing techniques. Trailing techniques can be used to locate an object or a destination. Back of the hand should be used to trail wall or other similar furniture or object. Extend arm that is closer to the wall or object. Walk by trailing fingers along the surface towards the destination. Trailing provides tactual information and enables to detect landmark or to find doorways. Children with deaf blindness may demonstrate variation in trailing techniques, including modification in arm and hand positioning depending on his age and development of motor skills. Sighted gait techniques. The visually impaired person typically holds guide's arm just above the elbow and maintain the position one half step behind the guide. Interpret the guide's body movement such as turn, step up, step down as they travel from one place to another. If the traveler is a child, modified grasps at lower level such as at the wrist or extended finger of a guide may be used depending on the child's height and that of the guide. At the initial stages, the child may need help to initiate and maintain the grasp. Cane techniques. A cane can be introduced to a child. He or she can hold the cane, can maintain the balance, and can walk. Selection of the cane. To differentiate the person with a deaf blindness from one who is visually impaired, look at their canes. The cane of the deafblind person is red and the white, whereas the cane of a visually impaired person is white. The length of the cane should be determined by the height of the user. It should reach the breastbone when held vertically. However, there are many factors while selecting a mobility device for children with the deaf blindness, which includes child's ability to hold the cane, ability to maintain the balance, his motor abilities, his attention span and visual functioning, and behavioral problems if any, and level of motivation for a movement. For a child with deaf blindness who has a physical disabilities or unusual gait pattern, physiotherapist should be consulted before introducing the cane. There are many challenges in providing orientation and mobility training to a child with deaf blindness as many of them have physical disabilities or limited motor skills, problem in maintaining the balance, and some of them exhibit behaviors that interfere with their ability to move around or to hold mobility devices. Therefore, it is necessary to use a variety of toys and objects such as hula hoops, push toys, rubber rings, or a tricycle as a pumper or as a pre-cane devices. The aim of training children with deaf blindness in orientation mobility is to create positive experience of movements, increase the interest in and ability for exploring the environments and independent mobility. Training in orientation and mobility as emphasizes on movement and exploration that assess the child to be independent, which is ultimate goal of the education. I hope you understood through this section about the what is orientation and mobility, why the orientation and mobility is important for children with the deaf blindness.